Welcome to Myth and Moonlight, where each night we journey together into worlds of wonder and peace. I'm your guide Elara, and tonight I'm especially excited to share this journey with you. There's something about ancient mountains that has always called to me. Their quiet strength, their patient wisdom, the way they've watched over our world for countless millennia, gathering stories in their silent slopes. Tonight, we'll explore a realm where mountains hold more than just stone and snow. They hold secrets, memories, and perhaps even magic. We'll wander paths few have travelled and discover truths long forgotten. But more than any adventure, we'll find something that often eludes us in our busy lives, a profound sense of peace and belonging. What I find most beautiful about these journeys is how they mirror our own inner landscapes. The mountains we climb, the valleys we cross, the treasures we seek, they're all reflections of our own hearts and minds. As we travel together tonight, perhaps you'll recognise parts of yourself in this tale, or perhaps you'll simply enjoy the journey for its own sake. Either way, I invite you to make yourself comfortable now. This is your time, a gift you've given yourself, and I'm honoured to share it with you. Let your body find its perfect resting position. Perhaps you're lying in bed or reclining in a comfortable chair. Wherever you are, allow yourself to settle more deeply into that space. Feel the support beneath you, holding you securely. You know that feeling when you've been carrying something heavy for too long. Perhaps a backpack, or grocery bags, or even invisible burdens like worry or responsibility. And then, finally, you set that weight down. There's that moment, that incredible moment of relief when the tension releases, and your body remembers what it feels like to be unburdened. That's the feeling I invite you to welcome now. Let's begin with your feet. Bring your awareness to your toes, the arches of your feet, your heels. Notice any tension you might be holding there. And with your next exhale, allow that tension to melt away. Feel your feet becoming heavy and warm, completely relaxed. Now, move your attention to your ankles, your calves, your knees. With each breath, you're releasing any holding, any tightness. These muscles have carried you through your day faithfully. Now, they can rest completely. Your thighs and hips begin to sink more deeply into the surface beneath you. Feel how gravity gently pulls them downward, creating a sensation of pleasant heaviness. There's nothing you need to do except allow this natural relaxation to unfold. Your lower back may be holding tension from your day. As you breathe out, imagine that tension dissolving, allowing your spine to find its natural alignment. Your abdomen softens with each breath, rising and falling in a gentle rhythm that's perfectly yours. Feel your chest expanding with each inhale, creating space around your heart. Your shoulders, which often carry so much responsibility, can now release and drop. Notice how much lighter you feel as they relax. Your arms grow heavy at your sides, your elbows softening, your wrists releasing. Your hands, which have been busy all day, typing, writing, creating, working, can now unfurl like flowers in the evening. Each finger relaxes, one by one. Bring awareness to your neck and throat, allowing any tightness to dissolve. Your jaw softens. Perhaps your lips part slightly. Your cheeks and the muscles around your eyes release any subtle holding. Your forehead becomes smooth and cool, like a still pond reflecting the night sky. And finally, the very crown of your head relaxes, creating a sense of spaciousness and ease throughout your entire being. Now, bring your attention attention to your breath. There's no need to change it in any way. Simply notice the natural rhythm of your breathing, the gentle rise and fall, the cool air flowing in, the warm air flowing out. This breath has been with you since your very first moment, and it will be with you until your last, a constant companion, always supporting you, always nourishing you. With each inhale, imagine drawing in peace and restfulness. With each exhale, release anything that doesn't serve you in this moment. Breathe in tranquility. Breathe out tension. Breathe in relaxation. Breathe out any remaining stress. Now, let's begin to create the world that will hold our journey tonight. Imagine yourself standing at the base of an ancient mountain range. These aren't ordinary mountains. They seem to shimmer slightly at the edges, as if they exist partially in our world and partially in another. The late afternoon sun bathes everything in a golden glow. The sky above is a deep, clear blue with a few wispy clouds drifting lazily overhead. The air here is crisp and clean, carrying the scent of pine trees and wild herbs. Each breath feels refreshing, invigorating. You can hear the gentle rustle of leaves as a soft breeze moves through the forest nearby. Somewhere in the distance, a stream tumbles over rocks, creating a soothing background melody. Perhaps you can hear birds calling to each other, their songs echoing across the valley. The ground beneath your feet feels solid and supportive. You might imagine soft grass, or a path of packed earth, or smooth stones. Whatever feels most comforting to you. The temperature is perfect, warm enough to feel pleasant against your skin, but cool enough to feel refreshing. The scent of the mountain air fills your lungs. Perhaps you notice hints of pine, of sun-warmed stone, of distant wildflowers. Maybe there's a subtle sweetness in the air, like honey or ripening fruit. These mountains have their own unique fragrance, ancient and alive. If you were to taste the air, it might remind you of pure spring water, clear and refreshing, with subtle mineral notes that speak of the mountain's depths. There's a vitality here that can be sensed in all things, even the air itself. As you stand here on the threshold of this journey, I invite you to consider what it means to discover something that was always yours, yet somehow forgotten. We all carry treasures within us, wisdom, courage, compassion, joy, that sometimes become lost in the busy chaos of everyday life. Yet they're never truly gone, only waiting to be reclaimed. The mountains know this truth. They hold memories of all that has been, and glimpses of all that will be. They remind us that beneath the changing surface of our lives, there exists something enduring and unshakable within each of us. You are exactly where you need to be right now. It's perfectly fine to allow yourself this time of rest and renewal. You deserve this journey and all the gifts it may bring. Your only responsibility in this moment is to yourself. To allow yourself to relax completely, to explore gently, and to rest deeply. Now, as you take one more deep breath, filling your lungs completely, we'll step across the threshold into our story. As you exhale, feel yourself entering fully into this world of ancient mountains and forgotten treasures, where the Mountain King once walked and where a crown of power waits to be rediscovered. The village of Elmhaven rested in the serious shadow of what locals simply called the mountain, while other peaks surrounded the valley. None commanded such respect or inspired such wonder as this solitary giant. Its summit often disappeared into clouds, giving the impression that it extended infinitely upward, perhaps even touching other realms entirely. lived his entire life in Elmhaven, working as the village herbalist just as his mother had before him. At 42, his dark hair had begun to silver at the temples, and fine lines had formed around his eyes, signs, his mother used to say, of a life lived attentively. He was neither tall nor short, neither broad nor slender, with hands that were strong yet gentle from years of grinding herbs and tending gardens. His cottage sat at the edge of the village, closer to the mountain than any other dwelling. From his windows, he could see how the mountain changed with the seasons. Verdant green in summer, fiery with autumn colours, pristine white in winter, and alive with wildflowers in spring. He knew its moods and its music, the way sunlight played across its face throughout the day, the way mist clung to its slopes in the early morning. Most villagers regarded the mountain with casual reverence, but Toren's connection ran deeper. On quiet nights when sleep eluded him, he often felt it calling to him, though he couldn't have explained this feeling to anyone else. It was as though the mountain was trying to remind him of something important, something he had forgotten. "You've always had mountain dreams," his mother had told him when he was a child, after he described visions of vast halls carved inside, the stone of chambers filled with soft, glowing light, of a throne room where someone important waited. She never dismissed these dreams as mere fantasy, which Toren had always appreciated. Instead, she would smile mysteriously and say, "The mountain remembers who you are, even if you don't." Toren's cottage was a place of comfort and simplicity. Bundles of drying herbs hung from the ceiling beams, filling the air with their mingled fragrances. Sharp mint, sweet lavender, earthy sage, pungent rosemary. Clay jars of various sizes lined the shelves, each labelled in Toren's neat handwriting. A large work table occupied the centre of the main room, its wooden surface smooth from years of use. The morning light filtered through the windows, casting dappled patterns across the floor. Toren moved through his familiar routine with practised ease, stoking the fire in the small stone hearth, brewing tea from fresh mint leaves, checking on tinctures that had been steeping overnight. These daily rituals grounded him, connecting him to generations of healers who had performed the same actions countless times before. Outside, birds announced the day with enthusiastic songs. Toren could identify most of them by voice alone. The cheerful warble of sparrows, the melodic phrases of thrushes, the rhythmic coo of doves. These sounds, along with the distant bleating of sheep and the occasional call of a neighbour, formed the comfortable soundtrack of village life. After breakfast, Toren gathered his foraging basket and stepped outside. The air carried the freshness of early autumn, crisp and slightly spicy with the scent of turning leaves. The sky stretched clear and blue overhead, promising a perfect day for gathering the last of the summer herbs before frost claimed them. As was his habit, Toren paused at his garden gate and looked up at the mountain. Something seemed different today, though he couldn't immediately identify what had changed. The familiar slopes and ridges were just as they had always been, yet something about the quality of light, or perhaps the way the shadows fell across the stone faces, made it appear somehow more present, more aware. "Good morning," Toren said, quietly, feeling slightly foolish for speaking aloud to a mountain, yet compelled by an instinct he didn't fully understand. A gentle breeze brushed against his face in response, carrying the distinct scent of wild thyme, which grew only in the high meadows near the mountain summit, too far for its fragrance to reach the village naturally. Toren inhaled deeply closing his eyes to better appreciate the unexpected greeting. When he opened them again, he noticed a raven perched on his garden fence, regarding him with unusual intensity. Ravens were common enough in the valley, but this one seemed different, larger, with feathers so black they shimmered with hints of blue and purple in the morning light. "Hello there," Toren said softly, careful not to make any sudden movements that might startle the bird. The raven tilted its head, its eyes gleaming with what Toren could only describe as intelligence. It opened its beak and made a sound that wasn't quite a typical raven's call. It was more melodic, almost like a phrase of music. Then, with a powerful beat of its wings, the bird launched itself into the air and flew directly toward the mountain. Toren watched its flight, a dark shape against the blue sky, until it disappeared into the distance. With a slight shake of his head, Toren returned his attention to the tasks of the day. He had promised old Willem a remedy for his aching joints, and Marta was expecting a fresh supply of calming tea to help with her youngest child's restless nights. The village depended on him, and he took this responsibility seriously. Yet as he walked the familiar paths through meadows and along the forest edge, collecting chamomile flowers here, willow bark there, his thoughts kept returning to the mountain and the peculiar raven. There had been something almost like recognition in the bird's gaze, as though it knew him, and that scent of high mountain thyme. How had it reached him so strongly, carried on a breeze that should have been too gentle for such work? By midday, Toren's basket was full of botanical treasures. Pale green lichen scraped carefully from north-facing rocks, bright red rose hips plucked from thorny bushes, purple vetch flowers with their delicate petals still carrying drops of morning dew. He found a comfortable spot at the base of an old oak tree and unwrapped the simple lunch he had packed: bread, cheese, and an apple from his own tree. As he ate, he gazed up at the mountain, which seemed to loom larger than usual against the sky. Clouds had begun to gather around its summit, not the threatening dark clouds of an approaching storm, but soft, white wisps that curled and shifted like thoughts taking form. Toren felt a familiar weight against his chest, a small object he had worn on a leather cord for as long as he could remember. His mother had given it to him when he was very young, telling him only that it had been found with him when he was a baby. It was a strangely shaped stone, roughly triangular, with natural markings that resembled a simplified crown. The stone was unremarkable in colour, a greyish blue, yet sometimes, in certain light, it seemed to glow with an inner luminescence. Without thinking, Toren pulled the stone out from beneath his shirt and held it in his palm. To his surprise, it felt warm, warmer than it should have been from mere body heat, and as he looked at it, the crown-like markings seemed more pronounced than he remembered, almost as if they had been deliberately carved rather than formed by nature. A shadow passed overhead, and Toren looked up to see the raven again, circling above him. It called once, that same musical sound from earlier, and then flew toward the mountain. This time, however, it didn't disappear into the distance. Instead, it landed on a boulder about halfway up a path that Toren had never noticed before. The path seemed to begin just a few yards from where he sat. It was narrow but clear, winding its way up the mountain's lower slopes in a series of gentle switchbacks. How had he never seen this path before? He knew this area well, had foraged here countless times throughout his life, yet somehow this path appeared entirely new. The raven called again, clearly visible on its perch, its message unmistakable. Toren hesitated. He had responsibilities in the village was as though something long dormant within him had suddenly awakened, responding to a call he couldn't ignore. "I suppose Willem's remedy can wait until tomorrow," Toren murmured to himself, carefully packing away the remains of his lunch. He placed his foraging basket under the oak tree, marking its location well in his mind so he could retrieve it later. With a deep breath, Toren approached the beginning of the mysterious path. The ground felt different here, more solid somehow, as if the earth itself was inviting his steps. The air seemed charged with anticipation, carrying scents he couldn't quite identify, but that stirred vague memories in the depths of his mind. The raven watched as Toren began to climb, his black eyes reflecting the midday sun. When Toren reached the boulder where it perched, the bird made its musical call once more, then flew further up the path, landing again in clear view. Toren understood. The raven was his guide. As he climbed higher, Toren noticed subtle changes in his surroundings. The familiar trees of the lower slopes, oak, ash and elm, gradually gave way to pines and firs, their evergreen needles creating a soft carpet underfoot. The air grew cooler and somehow clearer, making each breath feel like a gift of pure vitality. Small mountain flowers appeared alongside the path. Tiny blue gentians, delicate white edelweiss, clusters of pink saxifrage growing impossibly from cracks in the rock. Toren recognised them from his herbal studies, but had rarely seen them in person, as they normally grew only at much higher elevations. Yet here they were, offering their beauty to anyone who cared to notice. The raven continued its pattern of flying ahead, waiting for Toren to catch up, then flying onward again. Despite the continuous climbing, Toren didn't feel particularly tired. If anything, he felt increasingly energized, as though the mountain itself was lending him strength. By late afternoon, the path had taken him higher than he had ever been before. Looking back, he could see the entire valley spread out below. The patchwork of fields, the clustered buildings of Elmhaven, the silver ribbon of the river winding through it all. From this height, his world seemed both vastly larger and significantly smaller than he had imagined. The raven's call drew his attention forward again, and Toren gasped at what he saw. The path ahead led to a narrow cleft in the rock face, a vertical crack just wide enough for a person to pass through. On either side of this natural doorway stood stone pillars that couldn't possibly have been formed by nature alone. They were too regular, too purposeful in their placement. Ancient symbols had been carved into their surfaces, partially obscured by moss and lichen, but still discernible. Toren approached slowly, feeling a strange mixture of trepidation and familiarity. He reached out to touch one of the pillars, brushing away a patch of moss to reveal more of the symbols beneath. To his astonishment, he could read them, though he was certain he had never seen this script before. "Those who return are welcomed," he whispered, translating the flowing characters without conscious effort. "Those who remember are honoured." The stone beneath his fingertips pulsed with gentle warmth, not unlike the crown stone that hung around his neck. Remembering the pendant, Toren pulled it out and was startled to see that it was glowing now, emitting a soft blue light that seemed to respond to the presence of the pillars. The raven, perched atop one of the pillars, made its musical call once more, then flew through the cleft in the rock. Taking a deep breath, Toren stepped forward and followed his guide into the narrow passage. Inside, the space was darker than he expected, yet not completely dark. A diffuse light seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, revealing a tunnel that extended straight into the heart of the mountain. here was still and held a mineral scent, neither pleasant nor unpleasant, simply ancient. Toren's footsteps echoed slightly as he walked, creating a rhythm that sounded almost like words in a language just beyond his comprehension. The pendant glowed brighter now, lighting his way more effectively than the subtle illumination of the walls. After walking for what might have been minutes or hours, time seemed to behave strangely in this place. Toren emerged into a vast cavern that took his breath away. The ceiling soared overhead, lost in shadows, despite the gentle light that filled the space. Natural columns of stone rose from floor to ceiling, some as thick as ancient trees, others delicate as reeds. In the centre of this underground cathedral stood a perfectly circular pool of water, its surface so still it resembled polished obsidian. The raven perched on a rock beside this pool, waiting. As Toren approached, his reflection appeared in the dark water. Yet it wasn't quite the reflection he expected. The face that looked back at him seemed both older and younger than his own, with eyes that held wisdom beyond his years and a brow that bore no lines of worry. Most strikingly, a simple circlet of silver rested on this reflection's head, though Toren himself wore no such crown. "Who are you?" Toren whispered to the reflection, not really expecting an answer. To his shock, the lips of his reflection moved independently of his own, forming words that emerged as ripples across the water's surface. "I am who you were. I am who you will be again." The pendant at Toren's chest pulsed with light, growing almost too warm against his skin. Without thinking, he removed it from his neck and held it over the pool. The reflection raised its hand in a mirror of his motion, but instead of holding a small stone pendant, it lifted a magnificent crown, silver, like the circlet the reflection wore, but more elaborate, set with stones that glowed with inner light. "The crown has been waiting," the reflection said, its voice now audible, sounding like distant chimes carried on a mountain breeze. "Just as the mountain has been waiting, just as I have been waiting." "I don't understand," Toren said, his own voice sounding strangely ordinary in this extraordinary place. "What crown? Who are you waiting for?" The reflection's expression softened into a smile. "The answers are in your dreams, Mountain King. The dreams you've had all your life. The halls of stone, the chambers of light, the throne room where someone important waits." Toren's heartbeat quickened. "Those were just dreams." "No dream is just a dream," the reflection replied, "especially not for those with mountain blood." Before Toren could ask what that meant, the reflection began to change, ripples disrupting its features. When the water stilled again, Toren was looking at a different face entirely, a woman with silver-streaked dark hair and kind eyes that he recognized immediately. "Mother," he breathed. The image smiled. "Not by birth, but by heart. I found you as a baby, left at the base of the mountain, with nothing but that stone around your neck. I knew what it meant, who you must be. The markings on your pendant are more than decorative. They are a map, showing the way to what was lost." "A map to what?" Toren asked, though some part of him already knew the answer. "To the lost crown of the Mountain King," his adoptive mother's reflection said. "To your birthright." The water rippled again, and now Toren saw images flowing across its surface. A magnificent throne room carved within the mountain, a people who lived in harmony with the stone and sky, a crown that held power not to dominate but to nurture and protect. He saw a betrayal, a theft, an exile. He saw a baby being carried down the mountain slopes by a loyal servant, the crown transformed into a simple pendant to protect it from those who sought to claim its power. "The mountain has been without its king for too long," said a new voice, and Toren turned to find the raven had transformed. Where the bird had been, now stood a tall woman with midnight black hair and eyes that gleamed with the same intelligence he had recognized in the raven. She wore a simple dress of deep blue, and a silver brooch in the shape of a raven's wing fastened her cloak. "Who are you?" Toren asked, though again some part of him seemed to know. "I am Ravenna, advisor to the Mountain King since the first stone of this realm was laid," she said with a slight bow. "I have watched over you from afar, waiting for the day when you would hear the mountains call." "But I'm just a village herbalist," Toren protested. "I have no knowledge of ruling or crowns or kingdoms." Ravenna's smile was gentle but knowing. "The knowledge is within you, dormant but not destroyed. The crown will awaken what has been sleeping. The mountain remembers who you are, even if you don't." The familiar phrase from his childhood sent a shiver through Toren. He looked down at the pendant in his hand, seeing it now not as a curious keepsake, but as a key, a map, a promise. "What must I do?" he asked, his voice steadier than he expected. "Continue the journey," Ravenna said, gesturing toward an arched passageway on the far side of the cavern. "Find what was lost. Remember who you are." Toren took a deep breath, feeling as though he stood on the threshold between his old life and something entirely new. Yet paradoxically, this new path felt more familiar with each passing moment, as though he were not discovering something unknown, but remembering something long forgotten. "I'm ready," he said simply. Ravenna nodded and resumed her raven form, flying towards the passageway. Toren followed, the pendant, no, the transformed crown, lighting his way with its soft blue glow. The passage led deeper into the mountain, sometimes widening into chambers filled with wonders, crystal formations that sang when the air moved across them, underground gardens illuminated by phosphorescent fungi, libraries carved into the living rock with books preserved through some ancient magic. In each space, Toren felt memories stirring, not fully formed, but fragments of knowledge and emotion that suggested a deep connection to this hidden realm. As they travelled, Toren noticed subtle changes in himself. His steps became more confident, his posture more upright. His awareness seemed to expand, allowing him to sense the vast network of tunnels and chambers that honeycombed the mountain, to feel the presence of small creatures that made their homes in these depths, even to perceive the slow, patient thoughts of the mountain itself. They rested occasionally, though Toren didn't feel physically tired. Ravenna would transform back into her human form during these pauses, sharing stories of the Mountain Kingdom's history, tales of wise rulers and flourishing communities, of harmony between the people and their environment, of connections to other realms through ancient doorways hidden in the deepest reaches of the mountain. "This is more than just a mountain, isn't it?" Toren asked during one such rest. Ravenna nodded. "It exists in multiple realms simultaneously. Your world is just one of many it touches. That's part of what makes it special, and part of why its ruler must be someone who understands balance and connection. Like an herbalist," Toren said thoughtfully, "who knows that every plant has its place in the greater ecosystem, and that healing comes from maintaining harmony rather than imposing change." "Precisely," Ravenna smiled. "Your training hasn't been wasted, Mountain King. It has been preparation." As they journeyed deeper, the light emanating from the pendant grew stronger, evoked powerful emotions. The freshness of mountain streams, the richness of soil after rain, the sweetness of wild herbs in full bloom. Occasionally, Toren could hear distant music, drums that mimicked heartbeats, flutes that echoed bird songs, voices that blended into the very breath of the mountain. "We're getting closer," Ravenna said, after they had walked for what seemed like hours through increasingly beautiful passages. "Can you feel it?" Toren nodded. There was a pull now, an invisible current drawing him forward. The pendant in his hand pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, its light creating dancing shadows on the walls of the tunnel. Finally, they reached a pair of massive doors, easily 3 times Toren's height. They appeared to be made of stone, yet they were covered in intricate carvings, inlaid with silver and various gems that caught and reflected the light of the pendant. At the centre of each door was the same crown symbol that marked Toren's pendant, the throne room of the mountain. "King," Ravenna said softly, "sealed since the day of your father's fall, awaiting the return of the true heir." Toren approached the doors slowly, the pendant growing almost painfully bright in his hand. As he neared, he felt a vibration in the air, a recognition between the stone of the doors and the stone he carried. "What do I do?" he asked. "You already know," Ravenna replied. And somehow he did. Toren lifted the pendant and placed it against the carved crown on the right-hand door. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the pendant began to sink into the carving, as though the solid stone had become liquid. There was a sound, like a deep, satisfied sigh, and both doors began to swing inward, opening onto a space of such beauty that Toren could only stand in awe. The throne room was vast, its ceiling supported by columns that resembled ancient trees, their stone branches spreading to create a canopy overhead. The floor was polished stone that somehow retained the springy comfort of moss-covered earth. The walls were alive with murals depicting mountains, forests, rivers and skies, so realistic that they seemed to move and breathe. Natural light filtered in from openings high above, supplemented by the glow of crystals placed throughout the tight space. In the centre, a circular dais rose slightly above the main floor, and upon this platform stood a throne carved from what appeared to be a single massive piece of blue-grey stone, the same colour as Toren's pendant. Ravenna resumed her human form and bowed deeply. "The throne awaits, Mountain King." Toren approached slowly, each step feeling both momentous and entirely natural. As he neared the throne, he noticed a small indentation in its high back, a space exactly the size and shape of his pendant. Standing before the throne, Toren felt the final pieces of memory falling into place. He remembered now, not everything, but enough. He remembered being carried down the mountain as an infant, the loyal servant who had protected him, leaving him where kind hands would find him. He remembered, in the way that blood remembers what the mind cannot, the generations of kings and queens who had sat upon this throne before him, guiding and guarding the mountain and all who dwelled within and around it. With steady hands, Toren placed the pendant into the indentation on the throne. There was a flash of blue light, and when it faded, the pendant was gone. In its place rested a magnificent crown, silver intertwined with the same blue-grey stone, crafted to resemble mountain peaks rising from a circular base. "The lost crown," Toren whispered. "Found at last," Ravenna replied. "Take it, Mountain King. Complete your return." Toren reached for the crown, feeling its perfect balance hands as he lifted it from the throne. It was neither too heavy nor too light, just as a true responsibility should be, he thought. With a deep breath, he placed it upon his head. The moment the crown touched his brow, Toren felt a profound connection establish itself between himself and the mountain, between the mountain and every living thing that called it home, between this realm and the others that the mountain touched. Knowledge flowed into him like water filling an empty vessel. Names, histories, traditions, responsibilities. He understood now what it meant to be the Mountain King, not to rule over, but to serve as guardian and guide, to maintain balance, to heal what was wounded, to protect what was vulnerable. With this understanding came peace, a deep, settled certainty that he was exactly where he was meant to be, doing exactly what he was born to do. The anxiety and questioning that had followed him throughout his life in the village melted away, replaced by purpose and belonging. Toren sat upon the throne, feeling it conform perfectly to his body, as though it had been waiting for him all along. As he settled into place, the entire throne room seemed to exhale in relief. The murals on the walls brightened, the crystal lights glowed more intensely, and a soft hum of approval seemed to emanate from the very stone beneath him. "Welcome home, Mountain King," Ravenna said, her voice blending with the mountain's hum. "Welcome home at last." Toren closed his eyes, allowing himself to fully experience this moment of homecoming. The crown on his head felt increasingly natural, as though it had always been there. The throne beneath him supported him completely, allowing him to relax into its embrace. As he sat there, breathing deeply and evenly, Toren became aware of presences gathering in the throne room. Not physical beings, but consciousnesses, spirits perhaps, of those who had served the mountain before him. They surrounded him with welcome and wisdom, offering their knowledge without words. Among them, he sensed his true parents, their pride and love washing over him like gentle rain. He sensed too the presence of his adoptive mother, though she still lived in the physical world. Somehow her spirit had always maintained a connection to this place, which explained her understanding of his dreams and her careful guidance throughout his childhood. "Thank you," Toren whispered. The words meant for all who had brought him to this moment. The presences acknowledged his gratitude with a ripple of warmth that moved through the chamber like a breeze. Then, gradually, they receded, leaving him to begin his reign in peace. Ravenna stood nearby, patient and respectful of this sacred transition. When Toren finally opened his eyes, she smiled. "What happens now?" Toren asked, his voice resonating differently in the chamber, carrying the subtle authority of his new role. "Now, Mountain King, you begin the work of renewal," Ravenna replied. "The mountain realm has managed in your absence, but it has not thrived as it once did. There are connections to restore, balances to recalibrate, wounds to heal." Toren nodded, understanding. "And what of my life in the village? My work as an amazing herbalist, the people who depend on me?" "That life has prepared you for this one," Ravenna said gently. "The skills you've developed, the understanding you've gained, they will serve you well here. As for the villagers, they will find another healer. Or perhaps," she paused, considering something, "perhaps the mountain will extend its influence as it once did long ago. Perhaps the healing you bring to this realm will flow outward, bringing renewal to the lands beyond as well." Toren liked this idea, that his new role wouldn't mean abandonment abandoning those he had cared for, but rather serving them in a new and more profound way. He closed his eyes again, extending his senses through the crown into the mountain itself. He could feel the network of roots extending down the slopes into the valley, the streams that carried the mountain's water to the fields below, the winds that circulated between summit and valley floor. There were channels through which his influence could flow, bringing subtle blessings to his former home. "Yes," he said, opening his eyes. "I believe that's possible." Ravenna nodded approvingly. "You're already thinking like a mountain king." In the days that followed, Toren explored his new domain, guided sometimes by Ravenna in her human form, sometimes by her raven aspect, and sometimes by his own awakening instincts. He discovered chambers and passages that responded to his presence, opening to reveal treasures of knowledge and beauty that had been sealed away since the crown was lost. He met the few beings who still dwelled within the mountain, mostly quiet, stone-like creatures who tended the underground gardens and maintained the ancient mechanisms that kept the air fresh and the waters flowing. They bowed deeply when they saw him wearing the crown, their rough features breaking into expressions of joy and relief. Toren learned to access the mountain's memory, a vast repository of experience and wisdom stored somehow in the very minerals of the stone. Through this connection, he came to understand more fully the history of his lineage and the true nature of the realm he now guarded. The mountain, he discovered, was a nexus, a point where multiple worlds touched and overlapped. In ancient sea, Basiri, time's travellers had moved between these realms through doorways within the deepest chambers, engaging in trade and exchange of knowledge. The mountain kings and queens had overseen these interactions, ensuring they remained balanced and beneficial to all involved. When the crown had been stolen and the rightful ruler removed, these doorways had gradually closed, the connections between realms weakening until only the thinnest threads remained. Restoring these connections would be one of Toren's greatest challenges and one of his most important responsibilities. Each night, Toren returned to the throne room to rest and reflect. Though there were comfortable sleeping chambers elsewhere in the mountain, he found that sitting on the throne with the crown upon his head allowed his consciousness to expand in ways that were both restful and illuminating. During these periods of deep meditation, he often received guidance from the ancestral presences, their accumulated wisdom, helping him navigate his new role. On the 7th night of his reign, as Toren sat in this state of expanded awareness, he felt a new presence enter his consciousness. Not an ancestor or a mountain spirit, but a distant mind reaching towards his own. "Who calls to the Mountain King?" Toren asked, projecting the thought outward. The response came not in words but in images. A young person lying in bed, eyes closed, breathing deeply and regularly. A book of mountain legends open on a bedside table. A window through which the distant peak of the mountain was visible, silvered by moonlight. Someone in the village was dreaming of the mountain, their sleeping mind accidentally making contact with Toren's expanded consciousness. The connection was tenuous, formed of longing and imagination rather than intention, but it was real nonetheless. Gently, careful not to disturb the dreamer's rest, Toren sent back a response. Feelings of peace and welcome, an invitation to explore the mountain paths in future dreams. He sensed surprise, then delight from the distant mind, before the connection naturally faded as the dreamer shifted into deeper sleep. This unexpected interaction gave Toren an idea. Perhaps Perhaps the renewal of connections could begin here, not with grand reopenings of interdimensional doorways, but with simple dream bridges between the mountain realm and the sleeping minds of those in the valley below. Dreams had always been pathways between worlds, after all. They were natural thresholds, requiring no complex mechanisms or powerful magic to cross. Over the following nights, Toren refined this approach. While sitting on the throne in his meditative state, he would extend his awareness down the slopes of the mountain and into the village, seeking minds that were receptive, those who wondered about the mountain, who felt drawn to it in some way, who were open to its mysteries. To these dreamers, he would send gentle invitations, images of peaceful paths winding upward, of sun-dappled forest glades, of crystal caverns filled with soft light, never pushing or pulling, simply offering an opportunity to explore if they wished. Some ignored these dream invitations, their practical minds dismissing them as mere fantasy, but others responded with curiosity and wonder, allowing their dream selves to follow the paths Toren revealed. These dreamers would wake with a sense of having visited somewhere special, carrying fragments of mountain wisdom back into their waking lives. Toren was careful to keep these dream journeys peaceful and restorative. These were not conventional dreams that processed daily worries or worked through unresolved emotions. They were genuine encounters with the mountain realm, experienced through the protective filter of sleep. Dreamers might walk through the underground gardens, sit beside the luminous pool where Toren had first seen his reflection, or even visit the throne room itself, though Toren always kept his identity concealed during these encounters. Gradually, the influence of these dreams began to manifest in subtle changes throughout the village. People reported sleeping more deeply and waking more refreshed. Children told stories of friendly mountain spirits who taught them the names of plants and stars. Farmers noticed their crops growing more abundantly, especially those planted in soil nourished by streams flowing from the mountain. Toren observed these changes with quiet satisfaction. This was the essence of a mountain king's work, not dramatic interventions or obvious displays of power, but subtle guidance and nurturing influence that allowed life to flourish according to its own nature. One night, as Toren sat upon his throne in his meditative state, he sensed a familiar consciousness approaching through the dream realm. His adoptive mother, Elara, her mind touched his with immediate recognition. "I always knew you would find your way back to where you belong." Her thought came to him, accompanied by feelings of pride and love. "You knew all along," Toren responded. "About the mountain, about who I was. Not everything," Elara admitted. "But enough. When I found you as a baby, with that strange stone around your neck, I had been gathering herbs on the lower slopes. A crow, not unlike your Ravenna, led me to you, making such a commotion that I couldn't ignore it. When I picked you up, you opened your eyes and looked straight at the mountain, even though you were only days old. Some things you just know in your heart." "Thank you," Toren said, infusing the thought with all the gratitude he felt, "for protecting me, for preparing me, for letting me go when it was time." "That's what parents do," Elara replied simply, "even when the child is destined to be a king." Her dream presence began to fade as she drifted toward deeper sleep. Before the connection was lost completely, Toren sent her a gift, a vision of a special garden within the mountain where rare healing plants grew in abundance. He included knowledge of how to find a hidden path that would lead her to this garden in the waking world, should she ever wish to visit. Consider it your royal garden, he told her, a place where the village herbalist Emerita can always be welcome. Elara's joy at this gift was the last thing Toren felt before their dream connection ended for the night. He returned to his physical awareness, feeling deeply content. The circles of connection were widening, between past and present, between mountain and valley, between dream and waking life. This was the beginning of the renewal he had been born to bring about. As weeks passed into months, Toren's confidence in his role grew stronger. The crown no longer felt like a new addition, but like a natural extension of himself. The throne room became not just a place of ceremony, but a true home. The mountain itself responded to his presence, the very stone seeming more alive, more vibrant than it had been in generations. With Ravenna's guidance and the accumulated wisdom of his ancestors, Toren began the delicate work of reopening some of the smaller doorways between realms. These weren't physical doors that could be unbolted and pushed open, but rather thin, places where the boundaries between worlds had naturally worn away over time. Strengthening these connections required patience and precision. Too much pressure and the delicate membrane between worlds might tear. Too little, and the opening would collapse back upon itself. The first successful connection was to a realm of mist and twilight, where silver-barked trees grew to impossible heights, and gentle, luminous beings drifted between them like dandelion seeds on the wind. These beings, who called themselves the Lumina, had once been frequent visitors to the mountain halls, bringing gifts of light and music in exchange for grounding crystals that could only be found in the deepest mountain mines. When the first Lumina floated through the reopened threshold into the mountain realm, trailing wisps of their home mist behind them, Toren welcomed them with the traditional greeting that had come to him through the ground's knowledge. Light meets stone, and both are made stronger. The Lumina responded with a harmonic hum that resonated pleasantly through the chamber. Their form was roughly humanoid, but translucent, with internal lights that shifted and pulsed with their emotions. They seemed delighted by the renewal of contact, their inner lights flickering rapidly in patterns of excitement. Communication with the Lumina was not verbal, but rather a combination of light patterns, musical tones, and directly transmitted emotions. Toren found that the crown enhanced his ability to understand these complex communications, translating them into concepts his human mind could comprehend. The Lumina expressed joy at the return of a mountain king, sorrow at the long separation between their realms, and cautious hope for renewed exchanges. They were particularly interested in the grounding crystals, which apparently served an important function in stabilizing their misty home dimension. Toren invited them to explore the reopened areas of the mountain realm, while he consulted with Ravenna and the mountain spirits about resuming the crystal trade. The Lumina accepted gratefully, drifting off to reacquaint themselves with spaces they hadn't visited in generations. The Lumina were always among our most valued visitors, Ravenna commented as she and Toren watched them depart. Their presence brings benefits beyond the obvious trade relationships. The light they emanate nurtures certain underground plants that have struggled in their absence, and their music, well, you'll come to appreciate that in time. Over the following days, more Lumina arrived, and with them came the music Ravenna had mentioned, complex harmonies that seemed to exist somewhere between sound and light, filling the mountain halls with a resonance that made the very stones vibrate sympathetically. Mountain spirits and underground gardeners gathered to listen, their usually stoic expressions softening into something like bliss. Toren himself found the music deeply affecting. It seemed to bypass his ears entirely, resonating directly within his mind and heart, evoking emotions and memories he hadn't known he possessed, some his own, others perhaps belonging to his ancestors, transmitted through the crown. The successful reconnection with the Lumina realm encouraged Toren to attempt more. Each doorway presented unique challenges and required different approaches. Some thresholds needed physical adjustments to the surrounding stone. Others responded to specific frequencies of sound or light. Still others opened only when certain astronomical alignments occurred. Not all attempts were successful. Some doorways had been closed too long or had shifted position within the complex multidimensional geography that connected the realms. Others opened onto worlds that had changed dramatically during the severed years, becoming inhospitable or even dangerous. Toren accepted these failures as part of the learning process, noting each attempt carefully in the mountain's records so that future efforts might benefit from his experience. The crown's knowledge was vast, but not infallible, especially regarding changes that had occurred during its long absence from the throne. Throughout this period of exploration and reconnection, Toren continued his dream outreach to the village below. The number of receptive dreamers grew steadily, creating a network of unconscious connections between the mountain realm and the valley communities. Through these dream bridges, Toren shared insights and inspirations that subtly enhanced the villagers' lives, techniques for more efficient farming, knowledge of new healing plants, solutions to problems that had long troubled the community. One night, a particularly receptive dreamer, a young woman who had recently begun apprenticing with the new village herbalist, asked a direct question during her dream visit. "Who are you, who knows so much about the mountain and shares it with our dreams?" Toren had been anticipating this question eventually. He considered his response carefully. The time wasn't right for full disclosure, but complete deception felt wrong as well. "I am the mountain's voice," he finally answered, "the guardian of its wisdom and the keeper of its connections. I'm the Mountain King," the dreamer whispered, the title rising from some half-remembered village legend. Toren neither confirmed nor denied. "What matters is not who I am, but what I offer. A bridge between your world and this one. Knowledge that can help your community thrive. A reminder of the deep connection between the people of the valley and the mountain that watches over them." The dreamer seemed satisfied with this response, and their conversation turned to more practical matters, specifically a respiratory illness that had begun spreading through the village with the arrival of autumn rains. Through this dreamer, and others like her, Toren began to establish more concrete connections with the village. Dream knowledge led to real-world discoveries, healing plants growing in locations that matched dream visions, ancient stone markers that aligned with dream maps, patterns of weather and seasonal change that could be anticipated based on dream warnings. Villagers began to speak openly of mountain dreams and their practical benefits. Some dismissed these reports as superstition or coincidence, but many recognized the value of the insights gained regardless of their source. Offerings began to appear at the base of the mountain. Bundles of herbs, bowls of fresh milk, handcrafted tokens of appreciation, echoing ancient practices that had been largely forgotten intuitively revived. Toren received these offerings with gratitude, directing the mountain spirits to ensure that those who gave were blessed in subtle ways. A particularly abundant harvest, animals that remained healthy through the winter, children who slept peacefully through the night. As the seasons turned and Toren's first year as Mountain King approached its completion, he felt a growing sense of accomplishment. The mountain realm was awakening from its long dormancy. The connections between our worlds were gradually being restored. The relationship between mountain and valley was healing. Yet Toren also recognized how much remained to be done. Some of the largest and most important doorways remained closed. Several chambers within the mountain were still sealed by ancient magics that he hadn't yet learned to address. The full potential of the crown's power was still largely untapped. On the anniversary of his ascension, Toren sat upon his throne with the crown upon his head, reviewing the progress of the past year and contemplating the challenges ahead. As he settled into his meditative state, he felt the now familiar presence of his ancestors gathering around him, their collective consciousness merging with his own. "You have done well, young king," came their unified thought. The mountain stirs from its long sleep. The realms begin to remember each other once more. The valley flourishes under your subtle guidance. "There is so much more to accomplish," Toren responded. "Yes," the ancestors agreed, "but time moves differently for a mountain. What seems urgent to your human perception is but a moment in the mountain's experience. You have lifetimes ahead to complete what you have begun." Toren absorbed this perspective, feeling his sense of time shift slightly as he aligned more fully with the mountain's ancient rhythm. The ancestors were right. This work was not meant to be completed in a year or even a decade. It was a process of gradual renewal, of patient restoration, of careful rebalancing. "Rest now," the ancestors advised. "Let the crown's wisdom flow through you without resistance. Dream with the mountain, and let the mountain dream through you." Toren followed this guidance, releasing his conscious efforts and allowing himself to sink deeper into the throne's embrace. The crown grew warm against his brow, its energy flowing like liquid light through his mind. His awareness expanded beyond the throne room, beyond the mountain itself, into a space of pure potential, where past, present, and future existed simultaneously. In this expanded state, Toren could perceive the mountain's true nature more clearly than ever before, not just as a physical formation of stone and earth, but as a living consciousness that extended across multiple dimensions. He could see the countless connections that linked the mountain to other realms, most dormant now, but still existing as possibilities waiting to be reawakened. And he could see himself, not just as he was now, but as he had been throughout the generations of his lineage. For the Mountain King was not merely a title passed from one individual to another, but a continuous presence that manifested through different bodies across time. Toren was both the newest incarnation of this presence and the sum of all who had come before. With this understanding came a profound sense of peace and belonging. Toren's earlier life in the village no longer felt like a separate existence, but rather a necessary preparation for his return to the throne. All that he had learned as an herbalist, patience, observation, respect for natural cycles, the delicate balance of elements required for healing, served him now in his role as Mountain King. As Toren drifted in this expanded awareness, he felt the mountain dreaming through him, showing him visions of what might be. He saw the throne room filled with representatives from a dozen different realms, gathered in council to address shared concerns. He saw the village expanding into a town, its buildings incorporating elements of mountain architecture, its people living in conscious harmony with the land. He saw himself walking the mountain paths in the physical world, no longer hidden, but recognized and welcomed by those who had once been his neighbors. These were not predictions, but possibilities, paths that might unfold if nurtured with wisdom and patience. The mountain's dreams were invitations to co-creation, offering direction without demanding specific outcomes. When Toren eventually returned to his normal awareness, he felt renewed and recentered. The anxieties that had troubled him, concerns about the pace of progress, about his adequacy for the tasks ahead, had been replaced by a deep, settled confidence in the unfolding process. "Thank you," he said simply, addressing the mountain, itself, the ancestors, and all that had brought him to this moment of clarity. In response, he felt a wave of warmth flow through the throne and into his body, the mountain's acknowledgement of his gratitude and its reaffirmation of their connection. With this renewed perspective, Toren rose from the throne and made his way to the Chamber of Seasons, a special space within the mountain where the turning of the external world was reflected and, to some extent, influenced. Here, mountain spirits worked with crystalline mechanisms to help regulate the flow of water, the movement of air, and the subtle energies that affected growth and decay in the lands below. The chamber was a perfect dome, its ceiling a mosaic of coloured crystals that captured and refracted light in patterns that corresponded to seasonal changes. The floor featured a detailed map of the mountain and surrounding valley, with tiny streams of actual water flowing through miniature river channels and microscopic plants growing in the areas that represented forests and fields. For mountain, spirits tended this elaborate model, adjusting crystals, redirecting water flow, and occasionally adding or removing tiny elements to reflect changes in the physical world outside. They acknowledged Toren's arrival with respectful nods, but continued their meticulous work. Toren observed for a while, absorbing the complex relationships represented in this living map. Then, guided by the insights from his meditation, he approached the eastern section of the model, the area where village lands met the mountain's lowest slopes. "May I?" he asked the spirit working in that section, gesturing toward a small crystal tool the being had been using to adjust the flow in a minor stream. The spirit handed over the tool with a slight bow. Toren knelt beside the model and, with careful precision, widened the channel slightly where the stream emerged from the mountain. This small adjustment would increase the flow of water to several village fields that had been struggling with dryness without causing flooding or erosion. Next, he moved to the northern section, where forest gave way to mountain meadows. Here, he used a different tool to adjust the placement of tiny quartz fragments that influenced air movement. The modification would create a slightly stronger updraft along one side of the mountain, not enough to disrupt normal weather patterns, but sufficient to discourage the formation of hail that might damage crops during the upcoming storm season. The mountain spirits watched with approval as Toren made these subtle interventions. This was traditional Mountain King work, not controlling nature, but gently nudging it toward balance, using the unique perspective afforded by the ground to perceive connections and consequences that others might miss. After completing his adjustments, Toren thanked the spirits and left access to one of his favourite locations within, the mountain, a small, perfectly round chamber with a ceiling that opened to the sky. This observation dome was positioned near the mountain's peak, offering a panoramic view of the surrounding lands and the star-filled sky above. Night had fallen outside, and the autumn constellations shone brilliantly in the clear mountain air. Toren settled onto a comfortable stone seat, shaped by generations of mountain kings and queens before him. The crown on his head seemed to enhance his vision, allowing him to perceive not just the physical stars, but the subtle energies that flowed between them, creating patterns that influenced the earth below. As he sat observing these celestial currents, Toren noticed an unusual alignment forming, a configuration mentioned in the ancient records, but one that occurred only once every few centuries. According to those records, this alignment created conditions favourable for opening one of the largest and most significant interdimensional doorways, the one leading to the realm of the Aria, beings of air and insight who had once been among the mountain's most important allies. The opportunity was unexpected but unmistakable. The crown's knowledge confirmed what Toren was seeing. If he acted within the next few hours, while the alignment was at its peak, he might succeed in reopening a connection that had been considered too difficult to attempt during his first year of rule. Excitement rose within him, but Toren tempered it with caution. The Aria doorway was complex, requiring not just the right celestial conditions, but also specific preparations within the mountain itself. He would need help. Closing his eyes, Toren sent out a mental call to Ravenna. His thoughts carried along the special connection they shared. Moments later, he heard the familiar beating of wings as she arrived in her raven form, landing lightly on the edge of his stone seat. "You've noticed the alignment," she said, transforming into her human aspect. "Yes," Toren nodded. "It seems we have an unexpected opportunity to attempt the Aria doorway." Ravenna's expression was serious. "It's sooner than we planned. Are you certain you're ready? That doorway is particularly responsive to the Mountain King's state of mind." Toren considered this carefully. The Aria were beings of pure thought and air, their realm a place where ideas took semi-physical form. According to the records, the connection between their world and the mountain was especially sensitive to the mental and emotional condition of whoever attempted to open it. Doubt, fear, or confusion could distort the doorway or even make it dangerous to approach. After his profound meditation on the throne earlier, Toren felt unusually centered and clear. The mountain's wisdom flowed through him smoothly, and his understanding of his role had deepened significantly. If there was ever a time when his state of mind was optimal for this challenging task, it was now. "I believe I'm ready," he said, with quiet confidence. "But we'll need to gather the necessary elements quickly." Ravenna nodded. "I'll alert the mountain spirits and prepare the Chamber of Winds. What else will you need?" Toren closed his eyes, accessing the crown's knowledge about the Aria doorway. Crystal resonators tuned to E and A, 7 white candles made from the wax of mountain bees, water collected from the mist pool during a full moon. He paused, considering. "And I believe at least one lumina should be present. Their light has properties that help stabilize the initial opening." "I'll arrange everything," Ravenna said, already shifting back into her raven form. "Meet me in the Chamber of Winds when the middle star of Hunter's Belt reaches its zenith." With a beat of her wings, she was gone, leaving Toren alone with the night sky. Toren remained in the observation dome, using the time to prepare himself mentally. The crown helped him access memories of previous Mountain King's encounters with the aria, their flowing, transparent forms that seemed to embody thought itself, their language of gentle winds and harmonic whispers, their gift for clarifying complex concepts and revealing hidden connections. The aria had been essential allies in the Mountain Kingdom's golden age, their insights guiding many of the most successful interdimensional exchanges. Their absence had been particularly felt during the Crown's lost years, as many diplomatic misunderstandings might have been avoided with their mediation. When the middle star of Hunter's Belt approached its highest point, Toren made his way to the Chamber of Winds, a vast spherical space near the heart of the mountain. Unlike most inner chambers, this one was constantly in motion, with air currents circulating through carefully designed channels in the walls. The floor was inlaid with a spiral pattern of silver and crystal that began at the edges and converged at the centre, where a circular platform stood. Ravenna had indeed prepared everything. 7 white candles formed a circle on the platform, their flames burning steadily despite the gentle air currents. Crystal resonators stood on silver stands, already beginning to hum as they picked up vibrations from the moving air. A small bowl of moon-touched water reflected the candlelight, creating dancing patterns on the dome ceiling. 3 mountain spirits stood at equidistant points around the chamber, holding long, slender rods of a blue-white metal that Toren recognized as Starcatcher, an alloy that responded to celestial energies. And floating serenely near the ceiling was a single lumina, its inner lights pulsing slowly in a pattern that suggested focused attention. "All is ready, Mountain King," Ravenna said, bowing slightly as Toren entered. Toren approached the central platform, feeling the air currents shift in response to his presence. The crown on his head began to tingle slightly, resonating with the crystal structures embedded in the chamber walls. "Thank you, all of you," he said, acknowledging each helper with a nod. "The alignment peaks shortly. Let us begin." Stepping onto the platform, Toren closed his eyes and extended his awareness into the circulating air of the chamber. The crown enhanced this connection, allowing him to feel the subtle patterns and currents as if they were extensions of his own body. Gradually, he began to guide these currents, using his thoughts to shape the air into a specific configuration, a 3-dimensional spiral that mirrored the pattern on the floor, but extended upward through the chamber. As the air patterns aligned, the crystal resonators responded, their gentle hum deepening and becoming more complex. The mountain spirits raised their Starcatcher rods, pointing them toward the center of the chamber. Threads of silvery energy began to flow from the rods, weaving themselves into the air spiral that Toren was creating. The lumina descended slightly, its light intensifying and focusing into a beam that illuminated the center of the platform where Toren stood. The light didn't feel hot, but rather invigorating, as though it were energizing the very particles of air within the spiral. Toren opened his eyes, keeping his awareness extended into the air currents. At Ravenna's signal, he reached down and dipped his fingers into the bowl of moon-touched water. Then, raising his hand, he flicked droplets into the spiraling air. Instead of falling, the water droplets were caught in the air current, beginning to orbit around Toren in an increasingly complex pattern. As they moved, they elongated, transforming from spheres into strands that reflected and refracted the luminous light. The crown on Toren's head grew warmer, channeling his thought intention into the unfolding pattern. spiral of air, light and water began to compress and intensify, forming a distinct vortex that extended from floor to ceiling. At the exact moment when the middle star of Hunter's Belt reached its zenith, a moment Toren could feel through the ground's connection to the sky above. He spoke the traditional words of invitation. Between thought and breath, between stone and sky, a pathway opens. Aria of the idea realm, the mountain extends greeting and welcome. His voice seemed to split into harmonics as it entered the vortex, each syllable creating ripples that expanded and contracted in perfect rhythm. The crystal resonators responded, their hum rising to match the frequencies of his words. For a breathless moment, nothing else happened. Then, at the very centre of the vortex, a point of different light appeared. Not the warm glow of candles or the cool radiance of the lumina, but something completely other. A light that somehow suggested, thought made visible. The point expanded, forming an oval of shimmering transparency about the height of a person. Through this opening, Toren could see not a physical landscape, but rather what appeared to be concepts taking partial form, flowing shapes that suggested ideas in the process of being formed or understood. A gentle breeze flowed from this opening into the chamber, carrying what felt like whispered questions. Who calls? Who opens? Who remembers? I am Toren, Mountain King, heir to the throne and crown that have awaited my return. Toren replied, his voice steady despite the wonder he felt. I remember the ancient friendship between Mountain and Aria, and I seek to renew what was temporarily sundered, but never truly broken. The breeze intensified, swirling around Toren as if examining him from all angles. The whispered voice came again, more distinct this time. The crown's light shines through you clearly. The mountain's voice speaks through you truly. After long darkness, we had almost forgotten the way back. The way is remembered now, Toren said, and can remain open, if that is your wish. There was a pause, during which Toren sensed a rapid exchange of thoughts occurring on the other side of the opening. A conversation among multiple aria, too quick and subtle for him to follow completely. Then a form appeared in the doorway, a being composed of transparent currents that only vaguely suggested a humanoid shape. Within these currents, complex patterns of light shifted and changed, like thoughts taking momentary form before evolving into new configurations. We accept the renewed connection. Mountain King, the aria communicated, its thoughts flowing directly into Toren's mind. I am Elsentar, voice of the collective inquiry. I will serve as initial bridge keeper between our realms, while others prepare for fuller exchange. You are welcome, Elsentar, Toren replied with a formal bow. The mountain honours your service and anticipates the renewal of our shared wisdom. The aria bobbed in what might have been its version of a reciprocal bow. Its form rippled with patterns that conveyed approval and cautious optimism. Then it looked around the chamber, its attention seeming to focus on each of the helpers in turn. You have gathered skilled allies for this opening, it observed. Particularly interesting to see Illumina participating. Their realm was always more hesitant about interdimensional contacts. Much has changed during the separation, Toren acknowledged. The Lumina were among the first to respond to our invitations for renewed connection. Their light has been a blessing to the mountain halls. Fascinating. The Aria's form briefly displayed patterns suggesting intense curiosity. We have much to learn about how the realms have evolved in isolation. and much to share about our own developments. There will be time for extensive exchanges, Toren assured it. For now, we should focus on stabilizing this doorway so that it remains accessible even after the celestial alignment passes. The Aria agreed, and together they began the delicate work of anchoring the connection. This involved creating resonance points in both realms that would maintain the essential frequencies of the doorway. On the mountainside, the crystal resonators were adjusted to hold these frequencies permanently. On the Aria side, Elsenthar created thought forms specifically designed to preserve the connection patterns. Throughout this process, Toren relied heavily on the Crown's knowledge, accessing techniques that had been developed over generations of interdimensional diplomacy. The Crown seemed especially responsive during this work, almost as though it had been anticipating this particular reconnection. When the anchoring was complete, the vortex of air, light and water gradually settled into a more stable configuration, a permanent, though somewhat narrower, opening between the realms. The mountain spirits lowered their star-catcher rods, and the luminous focused beam relaxed into its normal gentle glow. Elsenthar remained in the doorway, his thought patterns conveying something like satisfaction. The connection is stable, it confirmed. I will remain as guardian and guide while my kin prepare for more extensive interactions. Soon, we will be ready to resume the exchanges of insight that once benefited both our realms so greatly. I look forward to it, Toren said sincerely. Please convey my greetings and respect to your collective. The Aria's form rippled in acknowledgement before partially withdrawing into his own realm, maintaining just enough presence in the mountain chamber to serve as anchor for the doorway. Toren stepped down from the platform, feeling a complex mixture of elation and weariness. Opening the Aria doorway had required significant mental and spiritual energy, though the Crown had helped him channel and direct this effort effectively. You've accomplished something remarkable, Mountain King, Ravenna said quietly. The Aria connection was not expected to be possible for at least another year. The mountain provides opportunities when we are ready for them, Toren replied, remembering the wisdom shared during his meditation. Not necessarily when we think we should be ready. The Lumina drifted down to hover near them, its light patterns communicating approval and something like pride. The mountain spirits too seemed pleased, handling their tools with more energy and purpose than before. Toren thanked each helper individually before leaving the Chamber of Winds with Ravenna. As they walked through the mountain passages, he felt the subtle shift in the mountain's overall energy that came with each new interdimensional connection, a broadening of perspective, an enrichment of influence, a harmonization of previously discordant elements. The Aria will change things, Ravenna observed. Their insights have a way of illuminating paths forward that weren't visible before. We need that illumination, Toren said, especially as we approach the more challenging reconnections still ahead. They reached a junction where their paths would divide. Ravenna to coordinate with the mountain spirits about maintaining the new doorway. Toren to return to the throne room for rest and integration. Sleep well, Mountain King, Ravenna said, with a slight bow. Your crown shines brighter with each passing day. As Toren settled onto his throne, removing the crown and placing it carefully on a small pedestal beside him, he reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. From village herbalist to Mountain King, from lost heir to restored ruler, from solitary dreamer to interdimensional diplomat. The path had been neither straight nor easy, yet each step now seemed perfectly designed to prepare him for the next. The crown would wait for him to reclaim it after his rest. The mountain would continue its patient existence, unchanged by his brief absence from the throne. The newly opened doorways would remain stable, maintained by the dedicated efforts of spirits, Lumina, and now Aria as well. All was as it should be. The ancient rhythm of the Mountain Kingdom continued, with Toren now fully integrated into its flow. The lost crown had been found, and with it, a forgotten balance was being steadily restored. As sleep approached, Toren sent out one final thought blessing to the dreamers in the village below, a gentle reminder that they too were part of this great pattern, connected to the mountain and all it touched by threads both visible and invisible. Some would remember this message upon waking, while for others it would remain as a subtle feeling of belonging, of being part of something larger and more meaningful than their daily concerns. Either way, the connection was real and growing stronger, just as the mountain had called to Toren throughout his life, eventually guiding him home. It now extended its benevolent influence to all who lived within its shadow. The Mountain King had returned, and with him, the ancient promise of harmony between realms was being fulfilled once more. In those final moments before sleep claimed him completely, Toren felt a profound gratitude for all that had brought him to this place, the mysteries that had puzzled him, the dreams that had guided him, the crown that had waited for him, and the mountain that had always known who he truly was, even when he himself had forgotten. The mountain remembers, he thought sleepily, and now, so do I. As sleep deepens, the Mountain King rests peacefully in his throne room, deep within the heart of his ancient home. The crown sits nearby, its soft blue glow pulsing gently like a heartbeat, maintaining the connections between realms, even as its wearer dreams. Throughout the mountain, a profound sense of rightness has settled. The crystal gardens glow more vibrantly. The underground streams flow more melodically. The very stone seems to breathe more deeply. After generations of waiting, the mountain has its king again, and the crown has found its rightful bearer. In the Chamber of Winds, the Aria doorway shimmers with stable energy, its guardian, Elsendar, occasionally sending gentle thought breezes through to explore the mountain passages. In other chambers, Lumina drifts serenely, their light nurturing plants that had almost forgotten how to grow. Mountain spirits move with renewed purpose, tending to tasks long neglected during the crown's absence. Outside, the physical mountain stands tall against the night sky, its slopes bathed in moonlight. To casual observers in the valley below, it appears unchanged, the same sentinel that has watched over their lands for countless generations. Yet those with sensitive spirits might notice subtle differences. The way mist clings more lovingly to its slopes, the way birds circle more joyfully around its peak, the way stars seem to shine more brightly directly above it. The significance of the lost crown's return extends far beyond the mountain itself. It represents the restoration of balance, the reconnection of severed ties, the remembering of forgotten wisdom. In a world often dominated by speed and noise and constant change, the Mountain King embodies something different: patience, permanence, profound listening. This is the deeper meaning that flows beneath the surface of our journey together. Just as Toren discovered his true nature and rightful place, we too carry inner treasures waiting to be reclaimed. Just as the mountain held memories that survived, Generations of separation. We too possess wisdom that persists beneath the distractions of daily life. The pathways that connect us to this deeper knowledge may seem hidden or forgotten, but they remain accessible to those who approach with openness and trust. Sometimes we need guides, a raven, a dream, a feeling that won't be dismissed to help us find these paths again. And sometimes we need to simply pause, to listen deeply, to allow ourselves to remember what we have always known. As you rest now, perhaps you can sense your own connection to something enduring and meaningful. Perhaps you can feel, in your own way, the steady presence of mountains, whether physical peaks you've visited or metaphorical heights within your own experience. These inner mountains stand unshaken by passing storms, offering perspective and shelter in equal measure. Like Toren, you may discover that certain dreams have been trying to guide you all along. Like the mountain, you may be holding memories that extend far beyond your conscious awareness. Like the crown, you may possess gifts and strengths that are only waiting to be reclaimed and recognized. Rest in this knowledge. Rest in the certainty that beneath the changing surface of your daily experience lies something unchanging and true. Rest in the peace that comes from remembering your own rightful place in the greater pattern of existence. The mountain remembers, the crown remembers, and as you sleep, perhaps you too will remember truths that your waking mind had temporarily forgotten. Truths about who you are, about what matters most, about the connections that sustain you even when you cannot see them. Sleep deeply now, held securely in this awareness. Sleep deeply as the Mountain King sleeps in his throne room, as the crown glows softly in the darkness, as the stars wheel slowly overhead. Sleep deeply and dream of mountains. The throne room lies quiet now, bathed in the gentle blue light of the crown. The Mountain King's breathing has slowed to match the ancient rhythm of the stone that surrounds him. Outside, the stars continue their measured journey across the sky. Feel yourself settling more deeply into your own resting place. Feel the sea support beneath you, holding you completely. Feel the perfect stillness that comes when the body finds its natural state of repose. With each slow breath, you drift further into tranquility. The story of the Mountain King continues to echo softly in your mind, but now as a distant melody rather than distinct words. Images may float through your awareness. The misty mountain slopes, the luminous caverns, the shimmering doorways between realms. Let them come and go without grasping or analyzing. Your breathing becomes even slower, even deeper. Your body feels pleasantly heavy, as though gently sinking into the surface beneath you. This heaviness is a sign of complete relaxation, of letting go of all unnecessary tension. The mountain stands silent under the night sky, its presence a reminder of the value of stillness, of patience, of enduring through countless cycles of day and night, summer and winter, wakefulness and sleep. Like the mountain, you too can embrace this quiet state, this pause between activities, this restoration through rest. The crown glows softly in the darkness, maintaining its connections even as the Mountain King sleeps. In the same way, some part of you remains connected to your deeper wisdom, even as your conscious mind releases its hold. These connections don't require your attention or effort. They simply are, constant and reliable. Rest now in perfect peace. Rest in the knowledge that all is well. Rest in the certainty that morning will come in its own time, bringing with it new opportunities for growth and discovery. For now, there is only this moment of complete tranquility, this perfect stillness. Sleep deeply, sleep peacefully, sleep completely. The mountain watches over you. The crown's gentle light guides you. The story holds you in its quiet embrace. Breathe in peace. Breathe out any remaining tension. Breathe in tranquility. Breathe out any lingering concerns. Breathe in restoration. Breathe out completely. The throne room is quiet now. The mountain is still. The king sleeps peacefully, the crown glowing softly beside him. And so do you sleep peacefully, completely at rest, held in perfect safety. Sleep now. Sleep deeply. Sleep well. The mountain stands silent under the stars, its slopes bathed in moonlight, its summit brushed by gentle clouds. Within its heart, the throne room lies quiet, a sanctuary of peace. The king sleeps, his breathing slow and deep. The crown glows with soft blue light. Connections remain, even in stillness. Rest is complete. Peace is total. Sleep comes easily, naturally, the body heavy, the mind quiet. Breathing slows, thoughts fade, only peace remains, only rest, only sleep, deep sleep, complete rest, perfect peace. The mountain stands, the crown glows, the king sleeps, you sleep. Rest completely, sleep deeply, peace surrounds you, all is well. Sleep now, rest, peace, sleep, rest, peace. Thank you for sharing this journey. Good night.